Hey, everybody, this is Paul with Jesus Loves Addicts, and I'm here to introduce another two-part story. So Stephen Mathews was recently on our podcast, and his story has a lot to do with the search for identity and self-esteem. That probably rings a bell for lots of us. So guys, hang in there, and here's part one of Stephen Mathews' story.
So I started going out and not coming home. I stopped going to work for over a month, I think. My parents thought I was missing, but I was taking about 7 to 14 Xanax footballs a day on top of drinking around the clock. Every morning I'm waking up, I don't even know where my car is. Every single day I'm going through my phone to figure out who I need to call to figure out where I need to find my car.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures.
We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at,
Few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are
Because
loved.
we are loved.
Hi, my name is Stephen Mathews. I once struggled with my identity and self-esteem and being accepted. I turned to drugs and alcohol as a teenager to solve those problems. And drugs and alcohol robbed me of everything. It robbed me of time. It robbed me of things of the past and things of the future. I came to the Home of Grace 7 years ago and turned everything over to God and decided to follow Him. And He changed me into a new and different person than I am today.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the 1-year anniversary show of Jesus Loves Addicts. Kathryn, can you believe we have done 51 episodes of this already?
No.
It's amazing. Yeah, it has flown by. Any highlights for you?
Honestly, they're all highlights.
Yeah.
Every single one, I'm like, that was it. That was my favorite one. No.
Yeah, it's such a great show. You know, I think sometimes the impression is that it's all about the guests, but I'm not sure that Kathryn and I don't leave here the most blessed of the people having heard these stories and witnessed these redemptive, just amazing stories. And so
I think also what's really powerful are the number of people that have been on the show and then reached out afterwards to say, I experienced a different level of healing I wasn't even prepared for. You know, thank y'all for just letting me be a part of that.
Yeah. I guess we're crawling now, right? So when does a baby normally walk? Right around?
Depends.
Yeah. Well, we'll be walking soon. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, please, you know, as you guys watch this, maybe leave a comment as to some of the highlights that you've experienced. What were some of your favorite episodes? As Kathryn was reminding us early on, you know, maybe there's somebody that you'd like to hear a follow up on. What, you know, where is their story taking them now?
We can reach back out to if you have any questions for them. Let us know that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, our journeys don't end. In fact, we could make the case that our journeys really just begin when we're in recovery. So, so really good stuff. So thank you guys for being here. And we're excited about today's episode.
Yes.
We have Mr. Stephen Mathews with us today. And, you know, I was listening to Stephen do his introduction, and he mentions in it that as a child he wrestled with self-esteem and identity issues, and I thought, gosh, how common, right? And you know, maybe even more so today as things get more chaotic. I don't know if that's fair to say or not, but certainly it's not uncommon that we wrestle with those self-esteem and identity issues. And drugs and alcohol, unfortunately, are one of the things that kind of stemmed that tide a little bit for him, gave him some perceived peace, right? I stressed the word perceived in there. And so we're really excited. He struggled with addiction as a result of that for about 20 years, and he is here today with a little over 6 years sober. So
Yes,
really excited about
Right on the mark of 7, almost at 7.
Oh, pushing 7.
Next week?
No, December.
December.
Yeah. If we got into a time machine, it might be next week.
Okay.
December.
Yeah, well, what a great Christmas present.
Oh, you got that right. It's
yeah.
always the best Christmas present every year.
Amen.
The 27th.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Neat non-coincidence.
Yes.
So, Stephen, thanks for being here. You know, our stories always start somewhere, and typically way before that first drink or drug hits us. Where does yours begin?
I think the best place to start is always in the beginning.
There you go.
And my beginning started in Montgomery. I've moved around a lot growing up, a couple of different elementary schools and high schools, and that was challenging.
Yeah.
It was challenging to go to a new school and a new place and meet everybody from scratch again. And then once you start learning who the new faces are, getting some friends, you move again. So, and not only that, each time, especially when I moved from, I'd say from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham, that move was challenging because I was going into high school, which is challenging as any child. But my family also, they stepped it up when it comes to, my dad just started making more money. Okay. I'm just
so pressure and stress goes up with that.
So I was living in the country, doing the good old boy thing, and then overnight I'm going to a high school where kids are driving brand new Z71 pickup trucks and SS Camaros and
cultural shock. Yeah,
it was a cultural shock, and I already felt different, that I didn't fit in very well, and so high school was challenging for me. I didn't do great in high school.
And I'm sorry, Steve, did I miss what was the source of all these moves? Why did you guys move so much? Is that
my dad changed jobs a few times. He worked for the gas company in Montgomery. He took a promotion to Tuscaloosa, so he went to run a compressor station over there. And then I guess I was 14 or 15 years old. My whole family works in the funeral business, and he decided to go work for his family, work for his dad rather. And that's when we decided to move to Birmingham. And that's when my life really changed, was when I moved to Birmingham and kind of hit reset on some things.
And that's your parents? You have siblings?
Yes, I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
Okay, so you're the oldest.
I am the oldest.
Well, and I would also, kids can already be mean. But when you're going to elementaries and then getting older, what I would always realize there's so many friendships that have been friends since kindergarten. They're like firmly cemented.
Yes.
People I've become friends with since that are like, it was impossible to feel like we belonged with y'all because y'all all grew up together. And I didn't see it that way, but I realize now how hard that was for the ones coming in. Like, I just want a friend.
You're absolutely right. That was a goal of mine with my own children, that I just knew before they were born, it was a goal that where they start school is where they will finish. And that's, I can thankfully say that is the case. My youngest is a senior at Satsuma.
Okay, that's awesome.
So yes, she started at preschool there and she'll finish high school there.
Okay.
Nice. So you said, so it sounds like the Birmingham, the Birmingham move was especially trying for you. And so you were, I guess, what, if you're going into high school, where were you, 13, 14?
15.
15. I was getting there.
I was 14 turning 15 that year. Because I remember my mom took me to the DMV to get my permit. So I always remember I was in Birmingham that year, and that was about the time we moved, because I moved in the middle of a grade year.
Okay. So, and that's even worse.
Yeah, it was a little strange, a little challenging. But so I haven't always had the greatest self-esteem. Growing up was challenging for me at different times. My dad is not the same man he was when I was younger. And I think it's true. You can say that we all change as we grow up. Life experiences, things that happen to us. And my dad is a great man today. But we did not see eye to eye when I was younger about some things. And plus, I was a rambunctious kid. I was not exactly the greatest kid, and my dad didn't know exactly how to talk to me when I didn't do things right. So it made things challenging. I didn't think very highly of myself, and I didn't really have an identity. Yeah. I was scared to talk to people. I was terrified of women. I didn't like the clothes I wore. I was just very ratty looking all the time. So when did that pre-exist the move to Birmingham? Like, were that lack of self-esteem, that insecurity, was that already present when you went there? Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It started when I was much younger.
Okay.
I got in a lot of trouble when I was younger, and I seemed not to be able to avoid trouble. I just always found it, and it just kind of stuck with me.
Like just rebellious, just.
Well, yes.
Yes.
Rebellious, and I guess you could take that a lot of different ways. But some things too, that you're also trying to meet other people's expectations, and being that you say rebellious, if I choose not to meet those expectations and rebel and go a different way, the consequences of those were often a lot heavy
Serious.
to deal with, and it caused me to really struggle with social aspects, to have conversations with people, and to understand that that everybody else puts on their pants the same way I do every day.
Right.
So I had an inferiority.
So I'm sorry, don't let me take you where you don't want to go, but I'm curious because you're adding a little more detail to it. So you talked about trying to meet the expectations of people, and you mentioned how your dad is a very different person today.
Yes.
Were there, when you were a child, do you feel like there were very high expectations put on you, and were the consequences of missing those expectations, for lack of a better word, severe? What is that what we're talking about? Like you were trying to meet his expectations, your parent, what?
Yes.
Okay.
You could say as a child, it would probably start with my friends who I was running with. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be acceptable. And I may like them, but other people may not like them.
Right.
And because I chose not to just cut people out of my life, it caused issues. I could have easily just not spoken to anybody, but I chose my friends as I got older. And that caused some pushback because some of the things people were doing were not things
acceptable.
That they accepted, right?
Right.
Yeah. Here's the truth of the matter. When I moved to Birmingham, and when I first started drinking, when I really first started experimenting with drugs and alcohol.
And that's about 15, 16?
Yeah.
Is that about? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like my eyes, I could see differently for the first time. It's like prejudices, hatred, fear, just melted away from me. I was scared to talk to nobody, to do anything. Like I had that confidence that I've never had before. And
as a result of the drug and alcohol.
At the time, it was alcohol. Alcohol has been my bear most of my life, and alcohol has always taken me to very uncomfortable places.
Okay.
Yes.
And in all honesty, especially when you've struggled with self-esteem and fitting in and making conversation, and then something works like alcohol, it's seductive because we don't know the consequences. We don't know what's coming at the end of it. I can do this.
So I'm going to take it a step back a second. I loved music as a child. Mm-hmm. I wasn't allowed to listen to the music that I liked. Mm-hmm. On Friday and Saturday nights, this was in Montgomery, I would put a tape in and record Friday and Saturday night radio, 92.9 WTUG. Mm-hmm. And I never knew at the time, I got to think, I was like 7 or 8 years old, okay? Yeah. I did not know exactly what I was hearing.
Yeah.
But what I was hearing was yo, so I was really falling in love with mixing and DJing before I even really knew what it was. Okay. I just loved that sound. I loved the hype. I loved the bouncing. I loved the party. I loved the fun that they were having in these songs, right?
Yeah.
And it was rap.
Yeah.
And I'm not allowed to listen to rap.
Right.
So I had to put the headphones on, and make sure that I wasn't allowing other people to hear what I was listening to.
Yeah.
One time I left a mixtape in the car, and that was a big no-no. My mom actually said she pulled over and threw up in the car. No. But yeah, so music was a major part of my life growing up. And I say that because I got into car stereo as a teenager. And I did not realize at the time that I was getting into car stereo the same reason I found drugs and alcohol to be so successful. It took the attention off of me. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. And other people thought it was cool. Mm. That means that you liked me. Mm.
Yep.
And I fell in love with that. Yeah. And honestly, I started trying to fit myself in a places I didn't belong. I remember going to parties as a teenager, and like very good friends of mine that would say to me, I'll never forget this one guy. Matter of fact, today he's a manager for LabCorp, which is kind of funny. One of the people that people thought that would never make it in life and be in prison by 25. Like he runs LabCorp.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he says, Stephen, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you don't belong here. I was like, these are my friends. He's like, I understand that, but you're just different. And he was being really nice. He wasn't being ugly, right? But it's right. If I was a parent, and I saw probably 50 kids in this house having this house party as teenagers, no, it would not be somewhere I would want my child to be.
Right.
But you know what I found with these people? Acceptance. Yeah. Because I was going to a school that is in a very rich part of Birmingham that I did not fit in at all. I just didn't. Yeah. So I found my friends on the street. I found my friends that didn't judge me. And you know what? I didn't fit in with most of them. But I felt like I belonged. Yeah. Even if I really didn't, I felt like I did.
Kind of a similar process as to how people find themselves in gangs, right? Yeah. It may not be a healthy family, but it feels like a family, and that's good enough at the time.
Well, yes, some of it's the only acceptance they know.
Yeah,
right. They don't have to change. No expectations.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that. When I was in grade school, we had to do a paper, and I wrote about gangs. And I thought I was going to get in some serious trouble for it, because that's what I learned, that at the end of the day, gangs are all about survival. Mm-hmm. It's not what people think it is. Right. And it kind of changed the way I saw that too. It's funny how experience changes the way you see things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It changes the definition of things sometimes.
It's interesting you said that you got into this and that the word you used was, it meant you liked me, right? And I thought, what an interesting statement, because typically that feels like the goal, right? Hey, I crossed the finish line. I've got friends, they like me. But sometimes being liked very quickly and for the wrong reasons becomes another distraction to finding who I am, right? Because I'm not finding who I am, I'm finding who they are, and I'm metamorphosizing into what they want me to be.
Exactly.
And so I can almost lose myself even more in that.
You got that right.
In that you like me kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And that's where the identity problem came into effect in my life so much, because the more I pushed into being whoever you wanted me to be, the further I got away from understanding who I was at all. Yeah. Like clueless to who I was.
Yeah.
In fact, when I first got to Home of Grace, I know I'm fast forwarding way too much there, but I was, like, some of the guys here, I'll never forget, some of them told me, like, you are literally the quietest person I've ever met in my life. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, wow. Yeah. But see, I was just so clueless when I got here, but so determined to change. I was quiet.
So this move to Birmingham, was this in the age of raves and all that kind of stuff? So are you doing this kind of thing? Is that where you're DJing? And
that's where it all started. Yes, sir. So I was 18 years old, I think. So at this time, I was playing the piano as a child. I was in band. I played the trumpet, doing really well with that. I had a natural knack for music, and I did not understand the full understanding of why I had that until I got older in life. I knew my dad was in a band, but, like, for example, I didn't know my grandparents owned one of the hottest nightclubs in Birmingham until I was much, much older in life. And if you knew who my grandparents were, you would look at them and go, those people owned a nightclub? Like, yes, they did. Yeah. So music has always been in my blood. My uncle was a phenomenal musician, a songwriter. He had a great studio in his home. But so I was, music has always been a big part of my life, and I never knew where that would go. Yeah. Right. So I think it's important that I mention here that I was working at a place in Birmingham. And it's important that you guys know that even though I wasn't brought up in church, I've always had a very unique relationship with God. I've always been close to God. I would pray to God every single night. I would take my prayer so serious that if I messed up a word, if I stumbled, if I hesitate, I'd start all the way over because I felt like I disrespected God. I cannot tell you how many nights I would cry to sleep trying to get my prayer right. I was like less than 5. Like, why? What was in me that makes me think that that's the way you're supposed to pray when I wasn't even raised in church? Yeah,
But did anyone around you pray or like, was your family praying? Like, where did you see it?
My family, they're Christians, but we don't go to church. Okay. At this point, my experience with church would probably be going with my grandparents on Easter. Okay. On vacation Bible school. So up until that point, that's probably most of my interaction with church until I was about 12 years old. Okay. When I went to Tuscaloosa. So my neighbor up the street took me to church, and and it was a Christmas sermon, I believe, or a play, and I was 12 years old, and I started bawling like a baby, Didn't know why.
Yeah.
But I knew what it was. I didn't know it was conviction, but it was conviction.
Yeah.
And it just overwhelmed me. And I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior with my neighbor's mom. Her name is Sherry.
At
Sherry
what age?
Hubbard. I'm sorry?
What age were you?
12.
Oh, wow.
1992. In fact, I went home and wrote a letter that I still have to this very day. That just so I'd always remember that feeling, and it was a powerful experience for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was real. Unfortunately, when I moved to Birmingham, stopped going to church, got right back into things I shouldn't be involved in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes there's a false perception that once we accept Christ, everything's a bowl of cherries. But, life still happens, and we're still human, and we're still broken. So
exactly.
A lot of your pain follows your acceptance of Christ, which is interesting.
Right.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. If you have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days, we've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you're cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Absolutely. Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's Thrift Stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing. So what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's Thrift Stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's Thrift Stores, where giving back never goes out of style.
So I'm doing the club scene, heavily involved. I don't know if I've started working in a club yet or not. Yes.
Are you still just drinking alcohol mainly?
Drinking, smoking weed,
Okay.
but at this point, I'm still in high school.
Okay.
I am getting drunk before school. Like there are several Fridays that I would be passed out in class. I'd leave school every day. I had a full-time job in school. It's just my life just consumed of alcohol, right? So with the music, I was doing the club thing, and I met a DJ at a club in Birmingham at the studio, and I started DJing at the studio at the age of 18. Just not full-time DJing. Matter of fact, nobody would never know I was DJing. I was a student. I was learning under DJ Steele.
Yeah.
And he would help me there in his DJ booth, and then he worked at Bailey Brothers Music, which was just up the street, and he'd teach me beat matching and stuff there, and which was interesting because up until this point, I've played instruments. I've never touched turntables, and I never would have thought of turntables as an instrument, ever. Yeah. But
yeah,
I fell in love with it. I recorded a song
that you wrote.
That I wrote. I took it down to a friend of mine in Gulf Shores. Wanted him to hear it. He instantly put it in the club, and I saw. I think that was when a big light bulb, the wrong color light bulb went off. Is when he took it. I just wanted him to hear it, right? And the club was slammed. And he took it. He instantly took it out. Now I can still see it. He took it out of the CD player and stuck it onto his turntables, and immediately mixed it in. And I just froze. Because I'm waiting now for the reaction. and it was an Eminem remix. And this place just lit up. And that's when I realized that, hey,
I can do this.
I can make them happy with music. Now, at the time, I didn't see it that way. Yeah. At the time, it was the car stereos, but I was never allowing people to see who I really am. So that's what I was doing, and for a little bit. But I was 18, 19, 20 years old, late 20s. I was working with a guy on an assembly line at a plant in Birmingham. He was a strong Christian, and he kept saying that I reminded him of himself. He talked to me about Jesus every day. And at this time, I'm a rambunctious, rebellious teenager.
Not really patient with that conversation.
No.
Yeah.
But one night, my parents were out of town, and I had a case of beer I bought. I was alone. My friends I had a party planned, but something fell apart. And I remember I was over 12 beers in, and I wasn't drunk. And I knew something was really wrong. And I called him. His name was Tommy. And I called him, and I just cried with him for hours. And he was crying too, and he was so happy. And he said, go to church tomorrow. He said, just go. And I said, okay. So I went to church, and I couldn't make it through service. And I right at the end, I was just bawling my eyes out. And right at the end, I walked straight up and just told the pastor I wanted to rededicate my life to Jesus. And I did. And
I'm sorry. So is this after high school, or is this? So you're.
This is right after high school.
Right after.
This is right after high school. So when I did that, music was still a big part of me. Yeah. So I took that and moved it into like a Christian nightclub style thing. Me and another guy's name is Ernie Willis. He's a great guy. He's a great pastor. He was my mentor in Birmingham. And me and him together, we created a little Christian nightclub, club forum. From if God is for you, who could be against you?
Oh, that's cool.
So it was great. And eventually another church called the Cathedral of the Cross had the basement. And so they got the idea from us, and they did the basement forever. But no, it went great. And that was awesome.
Now, at this point, did the drinking stop, or were you still kind of doing that covertly? Or
yes.
Still doing it covertly?
No.
Oh, it stopped.
It stopped.
Okay.
It stopped everything. I mean, I stopped hardcore, and I did not realize at the time what alcoholism was, or any of it. In fact, at the time, I'm sure I could have stopped and just not ever done it again. But I still couldn't drink like other people, and I did not know that. Anyway, I fell in love with the church. And I knew all my life that I was called to be a pastor, even as a young child. And that's a huge story in itself. And we can talk about that some more, how I got to that, how I accepted that calling to be a pastor and decided, and at this point I was going to school to be a funeral director, to go follow the family business. But that's not something I wanted to do. It turned out that not everybody can work with the family. Yeah. And y'all already know a little bit of my history with my family, and it just wasn't going the way I wanted to go. And plus, when you have a calling on your life from God, it's just nothing's going to really work until you follow that. So that's what happened. I told my dad that I'm going to drop out of college being a funeral director, and I'm about 2 years in, and I'm going to go to a Bible college, Southeastern Bible College.
How'd that go over?
Horrible.
Yeah.
At first it went over okay. And I think because most people thought that it was I was just in a phase, that I'm just going to go right back to the street.
It would pass.
But it didn't. And I was a youth pastor at Clearview Baptist Church with Ernie Willis. I was his intern, and he put me over the middle school youth department, and we just went gangbusters with it. And God was doing some mighty, mighty things in that church. Church was exploding.
Yeah.
What about your younger sister and brother during all of this? How are they?
They're doing good. My sister and brother, they're doing really good in life. My sister today, she is upper level management for a reputable bank, and my brother runs IT department for a large corporation. They didn't take the same paths I did.
That's really my question. I wanted to know if they had any of the same struggles, or were you close to them?
I was closer to my sister than I was my brother. My brother is about 8.5 years younger than me.
Okay.
So when I was coming up, my sister and I, we were fairly close, but she was a good girl. And you know, she towed the line. And when she got to college, her best friends in college are still her best friends to this very day. I'm very proud of her. But she made the transition in high school at an earlier age than me, so it was a little bit easier for her to move into high school. My brother came in 8.5 years younger than me. So, and remember, I was mentioning my dad had a different change in life with money. So he grew up with things that I didn't have.
Right.
So we didn't see things eye to eye, unfortunately, ever. It's because just we were raised differently.
Yeah.
You know, I was raised playing in the creeks with nets, catching crawfish, and Chris, my brother, is raised sitting in front of a computer. But it's, you know, he's using it today
for him.
It's doing great for him.
Yeah.
And they're doing great in life. They really are.
So here you are working in this church. You've stopped drinking. I'm curious, though. There's a lot of little elements here that really exemplify what you were talking about, the search for identity, which looks like it got hijacked by a search for approval, right? Sometimes our search for identity can get hijacked by a search for approval, right? Hey, this is going over well. Let me by default just go here. It stops being intentional,
right?
And it starts being reactionary. I'm just reacting to the responses I'm getting. But my question is this, because you talk about, you know, I thought that was very interesting about even at 5 years old, you're very almost anxiously praying, right? These things have to be exact. I have to have the words down. If they don't, I'm falling apart. And now you're stepping into pastoralship, but I still don't hear where you have landed on who you are. Do you feel like, I'm trying to think of how to ask this, if I had to guess, it feels like you are still play acting. I am doing this because this is how I am supposed to be acting as a Christian versus, and it doesn't mean that it's not entirely real, right? It doesn't mean that you weren't moved, that the calling was, but it almost sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is still a should. This is what I should be doing versus maybe a passionate move towards, I don't know. Does this make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I love what you're saying. And I probably should have said this in the beginning. You're not going to believe this, as much as I'm involved in different ministries. This is the first time I've ever sat down and talked about this stuff like this.
Okay.
Now, I've shared my testimony before, but not in a conversation type experience like this. So forgive me if I'm diving back in my mind a few times having to think about things to make sure. But if you could ask me again what you just asked.
Well, because again, you're describing a person, your personhood of somebody who's very kind of almost anxiously approaching life, and again, it seems as though your search for identity has been hijacked by approval, right? Yes. So now you step into pastoralship, but it almost seems like you just bounced off of another bumper, found yourself here, it's being well received, and I'm going to do this because I should be doing this, right? Versus out of a, not that you weren't called, but at this time versus out of a calling, you're acting out of a should. You're still shoulding yourself.
Yes.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Is that an accurate?
I think that's a very accurate statement. And honestly, I've never really thought about it as much as I am right now thinking about it, because I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, but I know what I shouldn't be doing. And now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, where did I get it from as a kid? I fell in love with Billy Graham. There wasn't a tele thing that he did that I wasn't watching. I remember the late nights. I don't know why I'd be on the couch for whatever reason, but I remember Billy Graham always being on TV at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when the house was real quiet. I just loved Billy Graham. I was always infatuated with him. So I think that might be some of that. But the fast forward where you're talking about the bumping around, man, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I knew deep down what I was supposed to be doing, but I was still trying to be whoever I needed to be for you to like me, even in the church.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging.
Even knowing that we have a calling or knowing something that we're supposed to do, doesn't mean that we know exactly how to do it. We just keep putting one foot in front of the other, which is usually why it doesn't last or make, because there's not a foundation there. Even though I heard somebody say it once, that someone I knew was trying to walk in her calling before it was time. And I could see that she was called, and that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not there yet, but I also know that I know. I knew at 20 I was supposed to be a counselor. I knew that. I said that. I had 20 more years of addiction because there were still things I had to figure out, and I had to do it the hard way, my way, and in any which way but the right way.
So what we're talking about is direction.
Yeah.
Right? Structure, goal setting, passion. I didn't know what really any of those things were. I knew what the ideas of those things were.
Right.
But I did not know how to find myself engaged in those things because I could not physically see myself involved in the things that I should have been involved with. Because I was still trying to be whoever I needed to be just for approval.
Yeah.
You know? Because I know a lot of people go into school, they think they know what they want to do, and they never really do. But I knew what I was being told I was going to school to do, and I just knew it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I sometimes I struggle with the fact that I'm not in the funeral business today because of my grandfather, my uncle, my dad, but and my mom. But anyway, I had to make a decision, and where that story changes, like where did it go sideways? Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of all related to that. So I was in Ernie's, my mentor. His brother is a professor at Southeastern, and he was my youth minister teacher. It was a youth ministry class that night. And my dad never, ever, up until this point, has used the words, "I need to talk to you." So at this time, I'm not living at home anymore. I'm 20, 21 years old, 22 maybe, I don't know. My dad calls me. It says, "Hey, I need you to come by the house tonight. I need to talk to you about something." Ooh, this is serious. My dad never needs to talk to me. You know, as a matter of fact, I went up to the professor. My professor's eyes got big. He's like, "Oh, your dad needs to talk to you?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You need to go right now." I said, "Okay." So, and I was real happy. You know, I didn't know what was about to, you know, what he needed to talk about, you know. But he talked about the fact that he thought I was wasting my life. He talked about he's no longer going to help me go to school. He told me that if I'm going to be a pastor, that I'm never going to make any money. And that was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had in my life. I couldn't talk. I was crying so hard, and it was challenging.
I can't help but think that when Dad says, "I need to talk to you," there's part of your hope. And again, I make statements that are really questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't imagine that there's a little child and you going, "Gosh, I hope this is for something good," right? Like, Dad needs to talk to me, right? I'm about it, and then bam, you get.
Oh yeah, I assumed it was all something good. Like, I had no clue it was going to be something of negative. I just thought it was some news that he needed to share. And the thing is, at this point, I can't blame him for. I could have stayed in school. You know, I could have. There's so many things I could have done, but I chose that as the resentment. It got to me. I felt alone.
So part of your choosing away from the funeral home was a reaction to saying, "I'm not following those footsteps."
Right.
That's kind of okay. So there was a rebellion to your dad, to the family rigidity in that move.
I'm glad you brought that up, because at this point I can honestly say no. There was no pushback. That was the direction I was going, because I was 100% convinced that I was called to be a pastor. So it wasn't a matter of what I wanted to do. It was what I knew I had to do.
Yeah.
You really felt you were doing exactly what you were supposed to do.
What I was supposed to be doing.
When.
So, like, I just thought everything was going to unfold out normal.
Yeah.
But if I would not have chosen that path, that would have happened in time.
You would have stepped out of it
would have
anyway. So that was also, there was an element of convenience then to this too.
Yes.
Right.
Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with an admission specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today. So it's funny because, again, I go back to this. I still see you as somebody right now who, again, not dismissing a real calling, but what you're actually responding to at this point in your life is just simply approval, right? You have the right people in your life that seem to be encouraging this move, right? The people that are surrounding you. And so you're still, yeah, you're still just following the approval path, right? Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So where does the bottom fall out here then? Because you're not done yet. Your addiction is waiting for you silently in the shadows, right?
Unfortunately, the monster's just staring there, just looking at me. So that was in December, I believe, and I'm still into music, but I'm not into secular music. I'm doing, just everything's right. Everything seems to be going okay. But the fact that I wasn't having my school paid for no more was kind of a blow, and a kick in the stomach. And it caused me to, I guess you could say it caused me to rebel. And I was going to the beach a lot on the weekends because my family had property down there, and I was going with a friend of mine. And here's the thing. Remember, I said that I did not know I was an alcoholic.
Right.
And up until this time, I've been anti-alcohol in church. And a friend of mine that he was a friend of mine then. He was at Southeastern, everybody considered to be someone that was going to do very well. He got suspended he got caught drinking at a party. And if you go to the school, there is zero alcohol. There's a no alcohol policy. And there was pictures, and they wanted to expel him. But I'll never forget, he was throwing a temper tantrum in the hallway, and he had a big audience talking about how he doesn't see any problem with drinking alcohol. He went out with some friends, and if that's what he wanted to do, that's what he should do. It has nothing to do with his relationship with God, and he was pretty upset, and I hung on to every word.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I never thought about it that way. So I wonder if I should drink a beer or two while I do my homework. So that's what I started doing.
And there the switch is flipped.
I started buying alcohol just to study. The switch flipped, exactly. But I didn't know it was a switch.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a switch once it's flipped that I can't turn it off.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's the biggest thing about addiction is people think they're in control when they're not in control at all.
Amen.
At all.
Well, even the length of time, if you didn't know anything about it, you didn't know that length of time, it didn't stop. It was waiting, and doing push-ups.
Right.
And it's going to be even worse.
You're right. So I was a junior, about to be a senior. I'll never forget, because I didn't do good in high school. I made bad grades. Because I was never engaged in it.
Yeah.
I made great grades as a child, but in high school I just didn't. But I was on the president's list at Southeastern, and I didn't even have a chance to tell my dad, because I never made it to that conversation. I'm like, I'm on the honor roll at a Bible college. This is unheard of,
Right.
especially me. I was walking on cloud 9, and that news just happened right before my dad told me, sorry, dude, you're out. So that summer we went to the beach a lot, and that DJ friend of mine I told you about years prior, he still to this day works down there. Great guy. He's a great guy. But we just started talking a lot, and I started drinking more and more, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to take off a semester of school. I'm about to be a senior, and I'm going to take off a semester in school.
Yeah, one of those really good decisions we make on our pathway down, right?
I graduate in August. That was how many years ago?
You graduate in this August?
Oh, this coming August. So that semester turned into 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Well, hey, and here you made it full circle. But so what happens?
Well, so I just told me the idea of moving to the beach, just taking some time off, because I've always wanted to live at the beach, and I've always said that I'll do that if I could. And I'm sitting here having some issues with the church. It's just, and we can definitely get into that. But my dad is cut my legs out from underneath me, and I've always wanted to live at the beach. I'm not married. I have no kids. What's stopping me? And that was my idea. So I immediately moved down to the beach and started working the club scene. So I was a youth pastor at a church 1 minute, and the next second I'm clubbing it up pre-Ivan in Gulf Shores. So I say pre-Ivan because there wasn't much in the terms of club life in Gulf Shores pre-Ivan. Fat Tuesdays was pretty much the biggest place down there. In fact, you can go back and see the Ivan videos, and you can see my name and Mark's name on some of the marquees. I think that is so cool.
What is Ivan?
Hurricane Ivan.
Oh, Hurricane Ivan
took Gulf Shores off the map.
Wow.
It actually allowed them to rebuild it beautifully.
Okay.
But yes, sir. So Ivan changed everything down there.
Okay.
But so Hurricane Ivan happened around that time. Before that happened, though, while I was living down there, I was at a club and doing some things I should not be doing. And I met my future ex-wife. She was also doing things that she shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
Well, you're swimming in the same pool, yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought I've met the next Mrs. Mathews, and because I did.
Yeah.
You did.
I did meet the next Mrs. Mathews, and we ended up with two beautiful children. But she had an alcohol problem worse than me at the time. And here's the thing. That's why I say worse than me. Don't get hung up on saying that, because she is no better or worse than me, right? But why I say that is I was able to hide my drinking problem behind her because her drinking was a little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
So even though I was just a little bit behind her,
Yeah.
I was able to hide all in the background, right?
Because hers was very obvious.
Yeah, so we're drinking and drugging. It just never stopped. You know, we're just full tilt boogie. You know, at this point, you know, it's every weekend. It's all the time. And I'm also trying to hang on to a corporate job at this time. I'm working for a great company, and I'm trying to maintain that as well. And I did until I didn't.
Yeah.
So we stayed in Gulf Shores, and then we moved over to Biloxi.
Was your partying lifestyle the reason you didn't anymore? Did you lose that job because the drugs and the alcohol were just affecting?
No. In fact, you could say that job just made things worse for me. That it's a company that everybody knows quite well. But at the time, it was a very much of a party type company, partying all the time. I mean, party
Within the company atmosphere.
the company. And I was at an age and so involved with $1 billion company that it made me think that this is a lot more common than
you thought.
Than I thought it really is. I mean, I really did.
Well, which is probably true, but yeah.
Yeah, but so they never knew I had a problem because everybody in that company parties to the extreme.
Yeah.
And honestly, at this time, I didn't think I had a problem. I knew I couldn't drink and not throw up. I knew I couldn't drink and not black out. I knew I couldn't drink and do all these things, but yet I still refused to say I had a drinking problem.
Sure.
Right.
I have a throwing up and passing out problem. I don't have a drinking problem.
Yeah. I've got all kind of problems, but drinking's not one of them.
But I can handle it.
So I did. I met my first ex-wife, and we were married for about 3 years.
Okay.
And it was misery because drugs and alcohol just fueled that marriage. And it was it was horrible. So we were married for like I said, about 3 years, and that's when things really went sideways for me. The divorce was challenging, and I'm not going to throw her laundry out there, but she has her side of the street just like I do mine.
Yeah.
And as soon as she got out of the way, I was in the spotlight. And that's when
I couldn't hide behind her anymore.
I lost control. Like, I just lost it.
I don't know that you ever had it. You had just been doing just that. You'd been hiding behind her.
Exactly. I never had it. I just thought I did. You know, that's a very...
So what did losing control look like for you? Did she keep your children? How did that work?
All right. I had all the aces. I had all the aces in the divorce. She wasn't going to get custody. She wasn't even going to see him at all. In fact, in the beginning, even her mom was going to testify against her. She was in rehab herself, dealing with her own demons that she's also trying to take care of today as well. So it was easy to point fingers when you're trying, in the middle of a divorce, trying to get custody. You know, you've already justified in your head that you're the saint.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, everything gets weaponized, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as soon as we're actually separated, then I start into my shenanigans.
Yeah.
And because of my job, my corporate job, they I hate to say it, but it's the truth. They promote partying as part of their culture.
Yeah.
Because they believe that's the bonding and stuff. It's work hard, play hard. I mean, they really, really encourage it. Now, I'm going to, in full disclosure, if anybody knows who I'm talking about on this podcast, they no longer operate this way. There's a different culture in this company today. But at the time, it was not.
Yeah.
So it was full tilt boogie. So it was easy to have this corporate job and come in hungover or no sleep at all, and it's just laughed off.
Yeah.
You know, not thinking that, hey, this is not normal, you know, and
They were all doing it, so there weren't any consequences.
Right. So I started going out and not coming home at night. It got to a point where I stopped going to work for over a month, I think. I stopped going home, and my parents thought I was missing, and my friends were calling. And at this time, if somebody was telling me this, I'd say you're lying. But I was taking about 7 to 14 Xanax footballs a day on top of drinking around the clock. Now, I did not realize what at the time what I was doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was going on, and the Xanaxes and the drinking have gone on this bender now for many months. I mean, the hardcore kind, like not a breath of sobriety.
There wasn't a break.
Where I've completely stopped going to work and didn't think about it. You know, I didn't check in with my parents. I don't, every morning I'm waking up, I don't even know where my car is. Every single day I'm going through my phone to figure out who I need to call to figure out where I need to find my car. You know,
where
what
were
happened.
your kids?
My mom or with Kathy, or that's about to come back full circle with that. But, you know, right now at this point, I did miss the fact where I had all the aces and lost that. So, I think I need to go back. Is that okay that I go back to that? Because I think that's important to know. That I had all the aces, and I'm on my P's and Q's. I'm following. You know, the judge has already set the requirements for who had to stay in the home, and her lawyer told her not to leave the home because it would be abandonment, and I would automatically get the home because she's not from here. She's from Mobile, and it was so bad. But every time she's drinking the house, I was told to call the law, and the law would come and get her and take her out of the house. I was told to do that every time by my attorney, by my dad. And, you know, there's so much pressure to do all these right things to make sure that you get your kids in the end.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is I wasn't fit to be a parent either.
Yeah.
It was just the perception of that. In fact, it was my best friend at the time. His name's Danny. It was his daddy. I went to his, actually it was his father-in-law. Went to his father-in-law's house, and I just told him, I said, man, I need some help, and tried telling him what I'm doing. And he said the most honest thing to me through this divorce. He said, Stephen, I'm going to be honest with you, man. If it was up to me, neither one of y'all would have custody of the kids. And if this is what you're going to take to the judge, you all both going to lose. He said, Stephen, anyway, I've never thought about it that way. But it really got my attention. So, but I was at the time I was stubborn, like, oh, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I've got all
I
the
don't wanna
answers
hear
because the perception of the court was I was an angel because she had nothing on me. You know, right now I've got a lot.
Yeah.
You know, but I did not realize. I did realize a lie. In the great state of Alabama, if you're in the middle of a divorce and you decide to have sex with your wife, everything on the table is off the table.
The clock starts again.
The clock starts again. And I forgave her and said, hey, let's just see if we can work this out against better judgment of everybody, even myself. I knew it was a horrible thing to do. I said, let's work this out. And then I found out just weeks later that she sold a lot of my music equipment. And I used that as a reason to explode. And
just to tweak that, I mean, it's not a horrible thing to do to decide to try to work it out. The problem is you guys still didn't have the tools to do that. You were trying to work something out with all the broken pieces, and nothing has changed, right? You're like, hey, let's dive back into the brokenness without healing anything, and just see if. You know,
but she has another man at this point. So reconciliation wasn't something on the table because we just knew. But I want to reiterate what you just said. Absolutely. There's no such thing as a permanent ending. Yeah. Okay. But at this point, we've already realized that train has set sail, and that was the way it was going. But knowing now that I've lost, so she's from Mobile. Mm-hmm. So the second she knew this was officially over, and she has custody now, she's going back to stay in Mobile some, right? And I'm going out doing my thing, and that's when I disappear, and I just the bender, and let me catch you back to where I was. Okay, so been working a long time. They wonder what's going on with me. I'm a manager at a large location. So what's going on with Steven? So I called my dad out of the blue one day, and I did not know I've been missing. Yeah. And I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, you want to go to the lake today? He's like, yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just driving. And I still remember talking to him. I was drunk in my mind. I'm like, I need to get some more alcohol because it's starting to wear off. And anyway, so I get to his house and he gets up, he turns the TV off, and he sits down and he wants to talk about something real serious. I'm like, okay. And he said, son, do you need help? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, where do you want to go? I said, I don't know. And so I went to Brooklyn Hospital. I don't remember my stats. That is when I was told the dangers of what I was doing. And how much of it was in my blood and what to expect.
But then they're just talking physically, right?
Yes. So anyway, they hooked me up to these machines, and I don't know all what's going on. I'm still not right in the head, and I keep having these convulsions. I keep having these seizures. They can't get me to stop to save their life. And it just seems like hours, and I don't know how long they were working on me. But they kept starting to say, I started to hear them say, we're losing him. He's going to die. That's why they kept saying that. Yeah. I don't know what exactly was my state of mind, but I kept remembering them saying that. And I don't remember a lot of people in that room. I remember the doctor right here. At this one time, I remember coming to, and there's this room full of people. Yeah. There's people running around crazy, and I don't remember what. And this is what I'll never forget. At the end of the bed, there was this really old lady, and it's almost like she wasn't there. And I wonder if it was an angel. But I'm sitting here, and I'm starting to freak out a little bit because I kept hearing them say, we're losing him. I think he's going to die. So, and this lady at the end of the bed, she had my foot, and she was the sweetest old lady. And she would just rub my feet just so slowly. She says, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And she just kept reassuring me that. But she did say that there's a chance that you're not going to survive the night. And then they kept saying stuff. And I yelled out, y'all please stop saying that I'm going to die. And I woke up several days later. And I did not know that I was being put into a coma to detox.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it until the next day. And actually, it wasn't the next day. It's funny that I didn't know till weeks later how many days I was out. And I was like, well, how long was I there?
Yeah.
But so they came to me there at Brookwood. They as another facility. And I knew I had to get some help. So I went to my first treatment center. That's when I went for help for the first time. And that's when I was introduced to the 12 steps for the first time.
Okay.
And that is where my recovery adventure begins.
All right. So thanks for joining us for part 1 of Stephen Mathews' story. Be sure to tune in next week when we'll air part 2 of Stephen Mathews' journey through addiction and into recovery. We'll see you then.